One of the real pleasures of collecting Famicom games is experiencing foundational games that never made it outside of Japan. Atlantis no Nazo, or Mystery of Atlantis, is a key game in the early days of the Famicom. It's a game that everybody had, everybody played, and was hugely influential. It's also unrelentingly difficult, to the point that it's known as a murige, or impossible game. There's a reason it was chosen as the game for the very first proper episode of Game Center CX. The story of the game is that you're the explorer Win, and you're trying to find his lost master who went missing in Atlantis. The lost continent consists of a maze of interconnected levels that you can go back and forth between. They're numbered up to 99 plus one more final level, but a few of that number are not accessible. In every area, you have about 100 seconds to locate the exit door. Or an exit door. A lot of the stages will have more than one. You start out with 7 lives, which seems generous, until you realize that any contact with anything kills you instantly, as does falling in pits. And the platforming in Atlantis no Nazo is some of the cruelest that I've encountered. The first thing you're going to notice about the jumping is that once you hit jump, you're dedicated. There actually is some air control in Atlantis no Nazo, but it's very slight, so you need to be planning where you're going to land before you jump. Oh, and your biggest jump? It can take you far enough forward that enemies will spawn at the edge of the screen after you've jumped and run into you. The only thing you can do about that is know the stage. How high you can jump depends on if you are moving at the time, and you'll often be required to make big jumps from tiny areas. And the game is filled with precise jumping. There's no enemies on this stage, but there doesn't have to be. The small amount of air control you have in your jump is most useful for when you need to jump down. Approach the edge of a ledge, jump up, and press forward to try to just go down a little bit instead of flying off the edge when you run off. A lot of the jumping at Atlantis no Nazo is near pixel perfect. When it comes to the enemies, Win isn't defenseless. He can throw bonds. Now normally I'd smooth over a transliteration problem like that, but here's the manual. They are bonds. He can throw one bond at a time, and it takes a couple seconds before it explodes. It's generally pretty ineffective against enemies. You can't hit the bats or the birds. You can smack a fish in the face with it. They collide with enemies and drop down, and sometimes that helps, but other times if the enemy is walking, they just keep going. And then there are these crabs that just close up when you throw the bond. It is possible to kill them by throwing one after the other, but it's not worth it. Bonds also blow open doors, and they can reveal hidden exits to stages. How would you know that that hidden exit is there? Well, you'd either be throwing those bonds everywhere and stumble across it, or you'd be talking about the game with your buddies in school, or you'd get that information from a guide. The treasure chests are kind of a weird thing in the game. It counts how many you collect, so it's definitely trying to encourage you to go for a maximum score that way. But they're hugely variable in how much they're worth. You get an extra life at 100,000 points, so some of the high-scoring chests can get you a life pretty quickly. But otherwise they might have 100 points, or even 10 points. As a tip, right from the start, skip the first exit door. There's another door that's sealed off, and going through it gets you to 2 chests worth 50,000 points each. Then you exit back to the same door to level 1. So you can always get an extra life right at the start. And speaking of those exits, the cruelest of them are hidden down pits. This one in particular on stage 3 is a good one to know about. It takes you to a special item. There are quite a few power-ups in the game, but they're less useful than you might hope. There's only 4 of them that really have an impact on getting you to the end, and you can easily lose them. The boots let you walk on clouds. That can be pretty handy, but it goes away if you run into an enemy. Getting the boots can help you get this star, and the star makes you immune to all enemies. Doesn't make you immune to pits, though. The clock slows the timer by half, and it's very useful for exploring and finding items. It goes away if you die at all. The light bulb allows your bonds to illuminate dark levels. It also goes away if you die. Also, I never managed to get that one. The rest of the power-ups affect your score. This up panel might be the most useless of them. It means that when I press up on the controller, I get 3 points. There is one more kind of useful power-up that I never saw. A microphone that allows you to scream into the player 2 mic to stun enemies. There are some cheat codes that can help you, assuming you can enter a code that's 60 button presses long and you have 15 seconds to enter it all. I actually never got any of the codes to work for me. A key to survival in the game is knowing how the enemies behave. The bats and birds are exactly the same. They'll always spawn at the same horizontal position, but they might have different heights. If they're high enough up, they'll poop on you. The hermit crabs lock themselves up when you throw a bomb, so just toss one and run past them. The fish jumps up at a regularly timed interval, so don't make any jumps if you haven't seen them in a while. The skeletons will just pop out of the ground, and you can bomb them, but they still leave a pile of bones there. The mummies are a bit sneaky. They'll shuffle forward until they reach the edge of a platform. Once there, they start throwing fireballs. The fishmen jump out of the water regularly. If they land on a platform, then they'll throw a fish downward at you. I've got to compliment the one nice thing at Atlantis no Nazo. The music is actually pretty good in this one. I'm not sure who was composing for Sunsoft at the time, but they're getting a handle on the Famicom's sound. Atlantis no Nazo was a big game for Sunsoft, so I'm not entirely sure why they never followed it up. I feel like a lot of the ideas in it wound up getting better used in Meta Fight or Blaster Master. Atlantis no Nazo is a game that tends to inspire seething rage in people outside of Japan who try it. And it absolutely is a cruel game that's designed to hurt you. It's totally unfair. But the big ideas in Atlantis no Nazo wound up getting picked up and used elsewhere. So it's kind of a key step in the progression of the Famicom. It's also one of the ultimate challenge games of the system. If you can beat it, then you've definitely earned bragging rights.